response video, I guess, response to 2 videos. The kid here, so far it's a polite video, but it's really long, 45 minutes. I'm only 6 minutes into it, and he's really not on the same subject. I mean, these people, you can't say you're a moral nihilist and then talk about how you value things when, well, you can, but it's not, there's no point in it, because you're not getting the point. The point is that the feeling thing creates value. Just by existing, a feeling thing has a value state. You can figure it out logically. You could just say, if you could take 1,000,000 mouses right now, 1,000,000 little mices, and you could choose between giving them little pets and little pieces of food, or strapping them into some horrible hardware and injecting them with cancer, there's no alternative rational explanation for why you would choose if all else was equal. Everything else is equal. There's no rational reason not to choose happy mouse versus horrified, scared to death, suffering, pain inflicted mouse. It's quite obvious there's a value difference there. I mean, it's just back to the Holocaust argument. It's much better to be eating ice cream at Friendly's than it is to be sitting in a lice-infested, cold, horrid concentration camp hut, dying of typhus. These are just it's just an obvious conditioned state that is different in and of itself, not how you project and say, well, 5 of these Holocaust victims are worth 7 bubblegum chewers. We're not talking about how you measure the value exchange. I said that's open to conversation. I think there's a truth to it. I think the truth is out there to be discovered yet. I have a claim to that truth, okay? But I'm not saying you don't have a valid argument about how variable the exchange rate might be. But the fact that the currency is made out of sentient welfare, that it creates the existence of value, and therefore this nihilism thing is totally inappropriate. There is intrinsic value in feeling things feeling. What they feel about, what causes them to feel, is not intrinsically valuable. If this made me deliriously happy, it wouldn't make this intrinsically valuable. It would make it valuable to me. Get it? But if this could feel, it would have intrinsic value in that I could squeeze it too hard and cause it suffering. Or I could treat it nicely and it would be pleased and comfortable. And those 2 states would be decidedly different, and there would be no rational way to say the negative state is the preferable state. There'd be no rational argument that could be made stating that it would be a good idea to have more of these in the negative state than in the positive state, if there was a clear choice and there are no other implications. So anyway, I didn't mean to get to this video first. I wanted to get to Snake first. So I'm not going to play his video. It's just more nonsense. Just really, he's going to talk about ethics, and the only ethics he was talking about is the ethics of me running a cult or something. It's just, again, it's just nonsense. I mean, on its face, it's idiotic. Is his whole idea that somehow I'm just preaching some sort of negative philosophy, and somehow I don't think people should have any fun. This is, I'm the guy doing this shit in videos. I mean, I'm swimming in videos. I golf in videos. If I still had my basketball hoop up, I'd be playing basketball in my videos. If there was other stuff if I didn't have to go to work and I could just goof off, I'd be doing that. But I mean, it's all been in my videos. I'm out in the sun in my videos. I'm walking and talking in my videos. I'm sitting in the woods in my videos. I am not incapable of wallowing in pleasure. I'm a fucking artist, for Christ's sakes. I wallow in beauty. So this whole idea that I have no capacity to feel good or to enjoy or to splendor in the grass is just absolute crap. on its face. What I'm saying is you don't create need machines. You don't make more of this. This is just a need machine. That's all we are. And there's a whole explanation for why we're constructed the way we're constructed, called evolution. And you just don't want to deal with any part of that reality of biology and the insidiously non-beautiful mechanism that it is the function of the game, the cruelty built into it. So yeah, you don't feed it, you don't make more of it. But I'm not sitting there telling anybody not to enjoy their life. I mean, that's just bullshit. I don't. There's no argument I can make. And even if the truth is just undeniably unpleasant, it's still the truth, and it has a right to be spoken. And this fucking, thought police attitude that you people have, like somehow you can't stand the competition, you can't stand the voices even voicing themselves saying it's not right, that somehow that offends you. I mean, it's just absolutely preposterous. And when you think of how the human race has been mind-controlled into incipient servitude to bullshit and nonsense and putrid goddamn waste. The wasted humans in the history of mankind. The wasted animals. The disgusting, grotesque waste of suffering. And you sit on that pile of waste and just sit there and say, let's do it some more. What the fuck is that? But yes, any amount you despise me, I towards you times affinity squared or cubed or whatever. I mean, you're disgusting. You're worse than the fundamentalist lunatic. At least they have some sort of, they're wrong, but at least they're, well, I can't say they're honestly wrong, so that doesn't work either. Well, you're still worse. Yeah, fuck you. And this, like I said, this, I'm just going to accept the generic book cover, pop culture, simplistic view. I won't sit there and analyze it. I won't make a judgment. I'll just accept wherever the flow is going. I'll just go with the flow, and that's all you're doing. You have no argument here, beyond what? I think it's fucked up, but go ahead and make more of it. Because somehow making more of it doesn't implicate me. It just implicates them. And them isn't really the same as me, because me and them are spelled differently. Whatever. Just too fucking stupid. Alright, so getting back to this value argument. So here he's talking about how he's doing the end game equation. So he's talking about, well, I could value pleasure more than pain, and I could say that, Yeah, well, that's not what we're talking about. The subject is you're claiming, by being a moral nihilist, all right, this is your change, you're using this verbiage, okay, and you use the word preference and morality. I mean, my videos are loaded with the word value and ethics, okay, it's a value equation. Now, you want to call that morality. It turns out that that's what it ends up being in the end, I suppose. It draws conclusions. You can call that morality, but it has nothing to do with individual preference. It has to do with overall productivity and net products, which I talk about all the time. So we're talking about a value equation with a net product. And yes, we can't know explicitly or exactly in every circumstance what the outcome is going to be, but what we do know are probabilities. And so you can make a value judgment about the efficacy of something based on what its probable outcome will be. So let's play some of this. But this really is a different subject. Like I said, the argument to be argued isn't whether 40-pound dogs are intrinsically better than 50-pound dogs. No one's arguing an absolute made from nothing. We're arguing an absolute made from the premise that feeling things feel qualitatively. Absolutely. That it's an absolute qualitative difference between feeling good and feeling bad, and that qualitative difference is real. It's not illusionary, it's not fake, it's not meaningless. It is in fact, all meaning is related to it. Nothing can have meaning without affecting something that can manifest that qualitative feeling state.
And I could try to find, I could look at it and I could say, well, I think height is the best trait out of all these other traits. Out of happiness, intelligence, anything like that, I value height the most.
Well, right. So you're just making up value projections that have absolutely nothing to do with anything anybody's arguing. I'm not arguing you can just make up a value statement. I'm arguing that we manifest value states in how we feel. You sound like you are sick at the moment, have a cold, the flu, whatever. Being sick or becoming sicker, okay, these will be intrinsically deficits, declines in the qualitative state of your being. They are distinctly different. Being sick and being not sick are distinctly different and have different value weight. One is decidedly a negative state. You wouldn't want to make millions of sick people. You'd make millions of unsickness. There's no rational explanation for why you would make sickness in and of itself. Again, don't use some abstraction to justify the sickness by saying, well, the sickness saved another million people from being sick and therefore we can justify it. No, in and of itself, what is it? One mouse in my hand has a welfare. There's no rational reason in and of itself for me to think it would be better off if I cause it pain and suffering. It is decidedly, certainly, quite absolutely not good to cause it negative sensation without reason or purpose.
So I'm going to try to maximize human height, and I could do that, try to mess with the hormones of fetuses or anything like that. I could do that if I valued height, and that was my ultimate value, and it would be logical for me because that's my parameter. Those are my parameters. Height being the
well, I'll come back to this. There's no
that's
point. This is too inane and off subject, so this is not going to be relevant. There's just no. I'll take notes and more. It's just not. This is just. I'm sorry, this is not the fucking subject. You making up some parameter that you don't rationally or logically explain why it's meaningful, why height is better. I've explained why the welfare of a sentient being is meaningful, because it's an absolute fact that they have qualitative state, that it has qualitative substance and reality. It's not irrelevant what state it's in. It is the most relevant thing we can detect to have relevance in this universe, is the welfare of a sentient entity. So I have to stitch, I hate doing this stupid combining videos, but I'll have to stitch this together, so I'll be back. Hit the button. Hit it again, Gary. Alright, we're back. Okay, so he's conceding some portion of this, but then he'll say things like, okay, that, again, there are no values that are more correct. And we're back to, he's making an argument about valuing height, and I'm arguing that pain has value. Now, you can't argue about how height is relevant until you start talking about how height affects something's feelings, or whether it's going to cause something pain or gratification. There'd be no way to make height meaningful or valuable without some sort of explanation. So you're just claiming that height's valuable because you say so, but you make no rational argument connecting height to any value. Wherein the sentient feeling being in a negative state, being caused to have its comfort state degraded by some percentage, is clearly and fundamentally and by explicit personal experience definable as an absolute. It is absolutely a fact. It can never be anything else but a fact. And then you concede that fact by conceding that this person who didn't see it that way or claimed otherwise would be crazy, and then you talked about their logic. Does that make any sense? How can it be logically crazy? That's a non-starter. Again, you're talking about these prescriptive values where you're adding some extraneous purpose. So you're saying, well, the pain builds character. That's not the argument. The argument is there a kernel of value that is around us, in the world, among us? Okay, everywhere, that there is a sentient creature, in my opinion, there is a kernel of value. If there was a mouse on the moon, there would therefore be a kernel of value on the moon, because there would be a sentient creature that could either feel good or feel bad. That's where value comes from. Alright, so I put down the value interest versus the value projected or claimed. So that's the real point here. The value is how you feel. What you project, what you claim to be the worth of that, or how many something or others it's worth, or whether it's worth killing somebody else's kids for your gratification, or whether you could be a vampire and suck somebody's blood for your gratification. Those projections of values are claims you're making regarding the value of something else. The value of what you feel and what they feel is intrinsic. Okay, and it's not subject to your interpretation. It has a truth. And whether we accurately or inaccurately evaluate that truth is the question. So this also ends up getting complicated because there is this mechanism called desire. Desire, not a qualified definer of value. Okay, desire is a state of it affects our sentient character. It puts us in a degraded state if we have unresolved desire, unsatisfiable desire. So it can put us in a negative state, and it can make us think something has value that has no real intrinsic value. It only has value to our perception. Without our perception, it has no value. As I could argue, the existence of the human race has no more value than the existence of the non-existent Martians and the non-existent Phoenicians and the non-existent Moonicans and the non-existent Mercuryites. None of these things have any value outside of perception. So without our perception, our own perception of the value, there is no value. Okay, there's no intrinsic value in our existence. There's intrinsic value in our welfare. So again, this turns on your next comment, which basically you just totally butchered an easy statement. I mean, an easy argument that it's better to go bar hopping than holocausting. All right, and you turn that into, well, whether it's all right to commit murder. The Holocaust isn't about murder. The Holocaust is about incarcerating, torturing in the most brutal, harsh manner possible, slowly starving people to death in the most miserable conditions you could put a human being in. So we're not talking about murder. We're not talking about some kind of exist, not exist, which is totally a projection of value. There's no intrinsic value in our survival. There's only intrinsic value in the welfare we possess while we exist. When I'm dead, I'm no longer value relevant. Okay, so talking about murder is breaking the value equation as relates to holocausting. Holocausting means creating incredible suffering, the most horrid kind of suffering you can possibly imagine personally experiencing, versus the most enjoyable kind of behavior or activity, which is chasing pussy and such. Now, these two experiences, getting some and having nothing, are two dramatically different qualitative feeling states, and for you to somehow argue that it's somehow ambiguous or uncertain or confusing or subject to a claim by some person, some rational, logical claim they could make, explaining how in and of itself it would be better to have 1 million people holocausting than bar hopping, is ludicrous. So stick to the example as it's given. Don't pervert it by doing something stupid like saying holocausting means snapping your fingers and people disappear. Because frankly, that's, in my opinion, not a crime. If you can snap your fingers and things disappear, you can't really do much fucking harm that way. Alright, so this is, and so now I was getting to that, I just finished stating that, well, something along the same lines. Let's see what he says.
I've made it more clear by giving definitions in this video. So, when you're talking about analyzing, a system, and you're talking about using the words positive and negative in terms of.
Okay, so I was talking about the fact that in nature we can see the mechanism of repulsion and attraction. The mechanism has a fundamental function, and it is decidedly different. One is to keep something away, which is essentially fundamentally negative. It has to create a negative circumstance for the awayness to take place. All right? And the other one, the attracting force, is sort of the opposite, is essentially the absence of any negative, and so the things smushed together just from the pressure. So it's like the absence of air, and it creates a vacuum that will just suck things into each other. So it doesn't even have to be attraction, but it's basically just made up of the fact that there is no repulsion. The absence of any pressure or force stopping is essentially saying, open the door, come on in. And the negative force is this negative repulsive force has to be some kind of it has to be decidedly obnoxious just by its nature, because it has to force things apart.
Repulsiveness and attractiveness, I really don't have any problem with that. I mean, if you're not talking about it in any moral terms,
well, whatever, moral terms again. I mean, what, you have to let go of this, okay? Outside of a God, there is no edict, okay? But what is obvious in the argument here is that this idea that there is something fundamental in this mechanism that creates this idea of value, and that it's not something you just make up. It's something relevant, relative to the idea of the sentient and its capacity to be put in a degraded, qualitative state. Shit.
You're just using the words positive and negative in physical, in a physical manner, then okay. But what you were saying before was that.
Well, the physical manifests as a physiological experience for consciousness. Again, you just, okay, deny the existence of consciousness. Go ahead. I can't stop you. I'm saying that's illogical. It's nonsensical. We personally experience, so there's just no point in saying it doesn't exist, in my opinion. That is just plain ludicrous. The fact that our consciousness creates a state inside of us, okay, that we react to intellectually to try to resolve. It creates positive and negative right in front of us. The whip and the carrot right in front of us. It is created right in front of us. And to deny that the whip is bad and the carrot is good is insipid.
In your ephilism or idiot video, you were saying that, it's the only logical position to have the philosophy of ephilism. well, that doesn't make any sense because you can get the physical process, you can look at that, and you can get facts about that. But as soon as you start preferring one thing over another, you start preferring pleasure over suffering, or any.
Well, look, you're changing the subject now. It's not preferring pleasure over suffering. It's making an analysis of what is the kernel. Again, what is the core thing in the universe that generates the idea of value. And what I'm saying is that there's no sentient being in the universe, it would not be possible to generate anything of value. Nothing would matter. You couldn't, if you can't harm something, physically creating harm in the sense of a negative impact sensation, there's no harm. It's like Terminators. You could break their arms off, and there's no harm because there's no suffering, there's no pain. You can only damage their function, but that's not going to cause them any stress. They're not going to go ouchie, ouchie, ooh, ooh. Okay, if there's no sensation of suffering, okay, then there is no, it doesn't mean anything. It's like robots just banging into each other. It doesn't mean anything. They can break each other's arms off and knock each other's radar off and whap each other's wheels off, and it doesn't matter because they don't feel. But as soon as something feels, then it matters. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, it's just really frustrating to have to explain why feelings matter. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. I shouldn't have to do this. I shouldn't have to do this.
Anything like that, then that's when you take it past truth value. When it can't have truth value anymore, when it just becomes a preference.
Look, Effelism is based on the fact that it's a feudal system of biology, a replicating molecule, need that doesn't need to exist, completely perceptual value equations of the necessity of Earthlings being on planet Earth. That's Effelism, okay? It's a separate subject from your moral nihilism. Your statement, basically, that there is no value that isn't some subjective crap that people just make the fuck up. I'm saying there's an absolute truth about what is valuable, okay? It's not going to be read by the universe, but it's going to exist in the universe, okay? It's going to be a fact that we will either create a mess or we will clean a mess, okay? It's going to be a fact that we will end up causing more negative to be experienced than the positive to justify that negative. These are going to be facts, and when the whole thing is added up in the end, when all the equations come to the equal sign and there's this net value of the experiment, was the experiment worth it? If I had 1,000 rats and I put them through some mechanism that ground them up in some manner, if it doesn't produce anything but ground up rats, it's going to be pretty clear that it was a bad idea.
So that's what I take up argument with, not the physical facts of of life or feedback mechanisms or anything like that. I'm not taking up any argument with that. It's just when you start preferring one thing over another and then saying that that's objective truth. That's what I have.
Yeah, preferring bar hopping over holocausting. Yeah, that's right. I'm stating it's an absolute truth in the universe, okay, that it's better to have 1 million people bar hopping than holocausting. That's fucking the truth.
Probably. It's simply
we'll get back to this.
Okay.
Says you. No, it really. All right. Well, this crap was just so crappy that I gotta end it here. I can't take any more of this shit. So we'll just play this little part and just get out of here. This is too stupid. Too much of a waste of time. Value in the universe, and there is no real distinction between dying in a Holocaust or eating chocolate ice cream. And I'm supposed to say okay to that. Yes.
I do think that there's a distinction. Obviously, there are different physical things are happening in the world when you die or you're eating ice cream. But when you say a real distinction, do you mean, are you trying to say a real distinction as meaning a moral difference or some kind of intrinsically moral difference, like one being better or worse than the other?
I mean, yeah, that's right. I'm saying it's an absolute fact. There's no rational argument explaining how it could be any other way. Then one is decidedly, not a little bit better, not just better, no, decidedly, beyond reasonable doubt, beyond reasonable contention, beyond reasonable fudging. One is better than the other, and there is therefore a moral imperative to slide things into the chocolate ice cream eating category and to avoid sliding them into the holocausting category. That is the now moral imperative, is to try to keep things out of Holocaust and try to keep things in ice cream. Yeah, that's the truth. That's the absolute fucking truth.
No, there's nothing like that. It doesn't even, and it's not, that's a non sequitur.
Yeah, that's right. That's so far from being. Like I said, you cannot possibly make this argument without opening the door for me just giving you stupid examples. Like, okay, there's no moral distinction between me putting 1 million people on the moon eating ice cream or me putting 1 million people on Mars in concentration camp. That there's no distinction between those two activities. And if I was to take my activity into the entire universe and populate every single planet in the universe with conscious beings, there would be no difference between me populating the universe with Holocaust victims or me populating the universe with ice cream eaters. It's on its face, to its core, through every fucking bit of its atomic structure, a ludicrous argument to say that this is not a decipherable truth.
It does not follow. You can't even put that into words, really. How can one be objectively better with no reference to a value?
No reference to a value? How is there no reference to a value? There's two qualitative states, decidedly shitty and decidedly not shitty. I mean, fuck!
You don't have any value to put better or worse into perspective of.
The two states just did that. They're two distinctly different states. You just acknowledged they're two distinctly different states. How can you say there's no reference? It's right there in front of you. You conceded they're distinctly different. What you're saying is that the difference isn't real, that the difference isn't meaningful, that the difference isn't value-weighted. Yes, the difference is preposterously value-weighted. That's what all the difference is. There would be no difference if it wasn't for the fucking value weight. Oh, shit.
Doesn't make any sense because the universe doesn't care either way.
So again, it has to be the witness. It's all about the fucking witness. So if the rape victim gets raped and there's a guy standing there watching it and he doesn't care, then it's not happening. And if there's no witness, it certainly isn't happening. I mean, that's just idiotic. I've just given you sentient beings in a state. Whether the universe thinks it's bad or not is completely irrelevant. If there's one mouse on the moon in a trap suffocating, okay, it doesn't need the fucking universe to cry any goddamn tears for it to be a fact that that's not a good thing. Oh, God damn, this is so fucking frustrating. What am I doing on this planet? How did I get here? What the fuck? What are you? Are you fucking made of, like, are you some kind of Stepford human or something? You don't know what a feeling is? You haven't had one yet? Oh, man, this is so ludicrous.
You know, one person dying or one person living, it doesn't really make any...
Back to dying and living again. That's not the subject, shithead. Qualitative conscious experiences. They're enduring things. I feel like you have a toothache, okay? You don't have a toothache that fast and it's over. No, we're talking about enduring suffering. An experience of it. Fuck.
Difference. It just happens.
Yeah, again, dying, again, yeah, that I already, like I said, if the whole fucking human race disappeared, if I snap my fingers and it all disappears, yeah, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean one fucking goddamn thing. It's less than one mouse suffering on the goddamn moon. If there's two choices, torture a mouse or snap everything on Earth out of existence, guess what wins? Yeah, don't torture the mouse, because that's going to be qualitative, more substantive value going to be squandered there than in the human race disappearing, because they disappeared like that. They didn't know what fucking happened. They didn't cry. They didn't worry. They didn't angst. They didn't have a conscious experience, so it didn't fucking mean anything. Damn, God, people are so fucking...
Physical things happening. So one is not better or worse unless you have a value to...
Yeah, you just said it. One is not better or worse. Eating ice cream, holocausting. One is not better or worse. Fuck.
To how would you say a value to put it into perspective?
Yeah, we already have that. We have the value to put it. We have all the information we need to put it into perspective. We have our own conscious experience. We have the testimony of all the other sentients. We have all the animals screaming in the fucking goddamn slaughterhouses. We have evidence all over the fucking place that this is decidedly not a good thing to goddamn be holocausting, and it's decidedly a good thing to be yummy, yummy ice creaming.
Parameters to work within for your words of better or worse to take meaning.
Oh, right.
Otherwise, it's meaningless. It means nothing.
Alright, well, anyway, so that is really enough, right? That's enough, right? I shouldn't have to do this, right? I mean, I've been a good little soldier. I mean, I sit here and I make these response videos and I listen to this inane crap and I take it and I take it and I take it, but this is going too far, isn't it? Holocausting ice cream. Well, you can't tell the difference. You just don't have a proper ruler. There's no way to do it. We don't have a micronometer, galactical blah 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 blah. So we can't know the difference. No, it's totally uncertain. Beats me. Yeah.